It's not always about games, and it's not always good. Full frontal garbage.
Full frontal. Hello and welcome to the Full Frontal Garbage Podcast, Episode 3. I am Bumtastik. This is Alexi Redgrave.
Nice to meet you. If you're just joining us, welcome. If this is your third episode, we're sorry.
What's wrong with you? What's going on? Is everything okay at home?
Everything's fine.
Oh no, I meant the listener.
Oh, yeah, no. We don't care, but we're going to ask. Just be nice.
It's contractual obligation.
So, David.
Yes.
Are you ready to become a cyberpunk post-futurist?
I've been ready. Oh my god. Every day I wake up and I'm like, damn it.
Why am I not augmented?
Why am I not a robot? Why am I not at least, partially Darth Vader yet?
Would that be a good thing to be partially Darth Vader? Like, I get the whole, cybernetic implants and being badass and getting to poop through a tube.
I was fixing to say the colostomy bag,
Yeah, but, do you really want 100% of your skin seared off to get that, though?
It wasn't 100%. I saw Return of the Jedi. That dude had some flesh going on there. He wasn't just a skeleton.
Oh, no. I mean, it'll eventually grow back, but that must have been painful. My point is, does it make us in the cyberpunk future right now as far as body modifications go? I mean, does it count that we're only really giving enhancements to the disabled just to bring them up to normal level? Or does cyberpunk actually begin once we've opened it up to the masses? That's what I'm asking, I guess.
I think it only counts when it becomes cosmetic.
That's very true.
That's
I
what I
thought
believe.
Of from that angle.
Yeah, I believe once it becomes, because it's kind of like, look at skateboarding, just a bunch of hood rats and no good degenerates, the scum of society, and then boom, DC shoes just lining the walls of shoe stores. You see what I'm saying? When it becomes mainstream and it becomes integrated into normal society and people start striving to achieve a look.
Yeah,
or a certain functionality.
I get that. What was it that you told me at one point was punk died the day it became punk?
Well, it's the whole thing there was, and I can understand the idea of organizing like a movement or being a part of something, but I always kind of thought it was weird. It's like the whole basis for what punk is as a genre kind of dies when someone says, "Hey, I want to be a punk band." You know what I mean?
Fair enough. Because I kind of feel the same way about cyberpunk. Because if you're doing it, and not to be gatekeeping, if you want to call yourself a cyberpunk, go right ahead.
I mean,
it's fine.
Or do whatever you want.
Same thing with the techwear and stuff. I'm into techwear, but it's a very good point of there's a difference between the aestheticism and then the core of it.
Yeah.
It's okay to have the aestheticism, but at the same time, it's the whole point of being cyberpunk in my eyes is modifying your person to be more useful in your day-to-day life.
That's the thing really is what it boils down to is augmentation. Is it okay to augment our bodies to push ourselves past the boundaries of what the human body is capable of? Jesus Christ.
Right. Where does it cross that line? Because I saw an interesting write-up, and I'll have to find a source for this if anyone's interested, but that they won't let certain disabled Olympic runners compete with normal Olympic runners because the technology for running has advanced to the point to where those that are missing legs from just above the knee, will, if they're the same physicality, they will outdo a normal human because their body's not burning lipids, their body's not creating the acids from the muscle movements and the physical technology of like the carbon fiber and all of the inner workings make them lighter than a normal human leg.
Yeah.
So you don't have the strain on your hips from carrying around a whole ass leg or legs, and you don't have the downfalls of your body having to feel muscles. So especially on like those long distance runners where, you know, it's not a sprint, but it's, you know, a full ass race.
Yeah.
They can't compete with the quote unquote disabled runners.
Yeah.
Because the disabled runners will, the re-enabled, yeah, because they'll beat them every time.
So what you're saying is that's kind of like a normal Olympic version of The Ringer. The Johnny Knoxville movie where he's...
basically. See, that's the thing is, that's what I don't get, is they'll let these runners compete against themselves because they all have, you know, missing legs or both missing legs or, you know, some kind of physical disability, but they've acknowledged that in certain situations, like I can't remember his name. He's been on that really popular, like, feel-good video that come up recently where like a little kid was learning to walk with his artificial leg for the first time. And he has both. I think we've all seen it at this point, but it's he's got both legs amputated just above the knee in the same spot.
Yeah.
And if he's standing still, he has to lean up against something because you don't have your toes, you don't have your
he doesn't have his natural balance.
He doesn't have his natural balance mechanisms. Exactly. He doesn't have the fine motor skills to stand on his own.
Yeah.
But they won't let him compete. But with other disabled runners, because of the previous mentioned I don't want to call them advantages, but workarounds, I guess, to the human condition.
Well, no, they're advantages to a degree, you know, like I mean, it's one thing to say, you know, oh, you got your leg lopped off, lucky, you know. I mean, that's kind of rude, but in the sense of looking at it on paper, looking at the numbers, you know what I mean? It's like the advantages physically are there.
Yeah, if you put him in an endurance run, he will win. And
so, really, we've kind of just devised the next big clickbait article for the internet, which is, have the Olympics gone pay to win?
Yeah, I can see him, like these all-star athletes that are starting to show signs of wear and tear, like staging their own car accidents. Because that's how he lost his legs. That's how he lost his legs. He lost them in a car accident. They're having minor fender benders, and like this illicit doctor jumps out of the fucking trunk and just hacks them off with a fucking axe. Thanks, doc. Whomp whomp.
He was out on his normal, you know, just evening jog, and he tripped and fell and landed on the blade side of an axe twice.
Yeah, it's like he was out walking his dog, and then suddenly this madman with a surgical saw came out of nowhere. And after he gave him $6,000, he left with his legs. What a tragedy.
I thought I was signing up to get a flu shot, and actually it was a surprise double amputation. What are the odds?
But there's actually a guy, I think he's doing it right now. He's walking 120, 140 miles across some United Kingdom for the national healthcare system.
Yeah.
He was either born without the ability to walk, or he got into a car accident where it's like he's walking now with the help of this exoskeleton.
Yeah.
It's like, when is that going to cross over to where like he's struggling, he's walking to gain notoriety, to where like we're a fucking transformer and your fucking wheelchair turns into an Iron Man suit and then you're kicking a robber's ass.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we're not too far off from that. But
I hope
just the
not.
way you said that a second ago, I love the thought. It's like he was born without the ability to walk. Like he's totally physically fine from head to toe. He just is literally physically incapable of walking. He'll just be standing still, and then he's just like at least like a light jog instantaneously. He just can't walk.
He's like, "Are you CrossFit?" No, I have a disability.
Oh man. We need to get some people behind that terminology though. Re-enabled. They're not disabled, they're re-enabled.
Exactly. They're re-enabled because at some point, and I believe if it's not already happening to the privileged in society now, it's going to shortly, and then it'll be available to everyone once costs go down.
Yeah.
Is, you know, you work at a plant and your whole thing is you have to crank this lever and it's fucking difficult and it sucks and the lever's hard to move. And then you have an accident in the workplace and you lose that arm and then you come back to work, 6 months later after you've gotten your new cyber arm and suddenly that fucking lever ain't shit anymore.
Yeah.
Because you got this new fucking robo arm that could punch through a cinder block wall. It's like, we're close to that now, I hope.
Yeah. But then there's going to be regulation on it because the fear of you being able to just punch through like a wall is going to become a reality, and that's going to be kept under check.
I'm exactly the opposite, honestly. I don't think they could regulate it. I think the only way they'd be able to effectively regulate it would be the way they kind of do it now, is to put it behind like a pay barrier. They just make it so expensive arbitrarily to where no one can get it. That would be a danger, because
there would just be this. It would basically like buying a firearm. There's a background check and all this stuff and mental stability and all that.
See, but I think it crosses a line once it starts getting attached to your body. It's like if they started regulating, how people got these arms and legs, is like, what's to stop them from like regulating subdermal implants or regulating fucking piercings and tattoos?
Well, yeah, but the problem...
I feel like there's going to be a very, very blurry line between performance enhancing and just customization.
Yeah, because the problem isn't inherent... Okay, go ahead.
No, I feel like that line will be drawn based on profession. Like, if you're some factory worker, they're not going to care if you blow like 3 or 6 months worth of wages to have this fucking uber arm that helps you at work that can punch through concrete walls. But
that's a huge liability.
It's a huge liability, but I don't think it's going to come up. I think they may tell you to pay for insurance or something, but I don't think it's going to be a huge control issue unless you're like getting that arm and you're also like an MMA fighter. It's like they don't want you to have a fucking arm that could punch through a fucking cinder block wall and then go fight another flesh bag.
Well, there's no way a man with a cybernetic metal arm is gonna be able to compete in a physical sport like that.
Precisely.
You can't.
I think
period.
That's kind of like
it doesn't matter what the strength you're capable of. Like, I mean, you're not gonna see anybody go out there, with their arm encased in metal in any way, shape, or form. That's never gonna be allowed. Like, there's like the safety, and that's what I'm saying is
there's going to be a safety risk. I get it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, yeah, I get it. Because, like, well, if you're like a doctor or, a nurse or something that, is just really into bodybuilding, you're a gentle soul, but you just want to look your best, right?
Yeah.
And, you spend all this time working on your physique and all that, and you get into some accident, or hell, maybe you were born without an arm, and suddenly, now that you're in healthcare, you get perks. You get to have one of these arms attached to you. They're definitely going to have to watch you closely, because, like, what if you go to pick up your newborn son or nephew or something like that, and, like, this arm now has, like, even though you could have done it before, you have a greater control over your born and bred human body. But now this giant metal arm that matches the rest of your body could physically crush this small baby.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not gonna want you in that hospital anymore with that.
Yeah.
So I feel like maybe not regulation, but I can definitely guarantee there will be limitation devices.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. I don't necessarily mean like government regulation, just like how you would keep something like that in check. Because in reality, I mean, nothing.
Have just like you have like a limiter chip, like these new import cars. Only instead of like slowing down the speed and the revs and all that to like safe highway speeds, it keeps you from crushing small babies.
But
because that's ultimately what it gets about.
Yeah.
Is
would you opt in? Because I'm almost certain that you wouldn't be against it if you were to say lose something in an accident. But would you ever opt into cybernetically enhancing yourself or augmenting yourself in any way, shape, or form?
See, it's funny you mentioned that because I don't know. Like, I've mentioned on this podcast before that I'm transgender.
Yeah.
And when I first came out as transgender, it was never heard of hardly to modify your body outside of those weird circles of like people who try to look like lizards, you know?
Yeah.
And they get those like weird silicone implants and shit in their forehead. You know, outside of that, there was nothing. But there's a growing movement now called the transhumanist movement. I'm sure you've heard of it.
I haven't heard of my name.
Well, I mean, it's different groups are calling it different things, but ultimately what it boils down to is there's already technology out there that puts us ahead of other humans, that helps us evolve by putting technology inside of us. And you can consider things like pacemakers and hormone treatments and anti-seizure devices that are implanted in your brain. You can consider that part of like the transhumanist movement. But they have this philosophy of biohacking. It's like, okay, say you implant a device in your arm that whenever you go and struggle with something or your body malfunctions, you have a heart attack, you're in a car accident, you're diabetic, you have your blood sugar shoot up or down, will automatically alerts the authorities.
Yeah.
But then there's this other side of it that's like, let's take it further. And so they can start implanting chips and transponders and things in them to where they walk into a room of their house. And this all exists right now. Like, they walk into a room of their house and the lights turn out previously in the previous room and turn on in the room they're walking into.
Mm-hmm.
Or they have a series of speakers throughout their house, and only the speakers that are close to them are playing music. And as they walk through their house, the volume goes down in some and up in others as they're walking through their house. Or it lets them come into their business and clock in for work without ever touching a time clock. And especially with the coronavirus, that one doesn't seem like bad, but I don't particularly want to get into it right now, but chipping yourself for a company seems like a bad idea, but
I mean,
more on that later.
Because I got some stuff to say about that for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a conversation we'll have about that. But that's the whole issue of it right now, is things like this already exist. So I don't think it's going to be too huge of a leap for people to be like signing up to voluntarily, like bringing up the second thumb option that we had in a conversation at one point during one of our live streams. It's like, it's completely non-invasive. It already exists. The only thing you have to do is fucking put this basically like a glove on, and it gives you a second thumb. He's like, would you go a little bit further and have that surgically implanted? Would you have another thumb? Most people would be like, yeah, that seems useful. that seems handy having like an X, like, because sometimes, you're hanging on to something, you're thinking like, man, if I just had a little bit more grip, or if I just had something to help me just a little bit.
Yeah.
You just multiply that over years in technological advancements, and suddenly you're like, cool, let's have this thing that pops out of my arm that does this task for me,
Yeah.
It's like, why put the technology into the things we use to interface with us? The transhumanist thing is, let's put the technology in us to interface with things that already exist. It's like, why bother setting up like thumbprint devices and facial recognition and iris recognition, like when you can just code a chip to your DNA and implant a USB drive or a USB slot into your forearm?
Well, for me personally, the biggest issue with that is something that's already established and something that's already majorly a problem. Unless you've been living under a rock or you're just completely and totally naive, you're more or less understanding of the fact that you have no net neutrality. Period. Like, if you were doing anything on the internet, there is no such thing as true privacy. If someone wants your information, they have it. If someone wants to know what you're doing, they can find it out, and pretty easily. The issue and why most things aren't like immediately stamped out is there's so much activity across the world. But when it comes to pinpointing and finding someone you're already looking for, or taking advantage of a singular thing, it is more than doable. It is very easy, and it's scary how accessible that information and stuff actually is. And so when you talk about adding your own personal human body onto that like whole network to be accessed and fucked with, like webcams, you have no control. Literally, the only thing you can do to keep yourself from being monitored with your own webcams is to physically block the camera or remove it.
I think that brings up a good point of like one of the paragons of cyberpunk literature and animation, movies, whatever, Ghost in the Shell. That's one of the huge premises is in that.
Yeah.
Is it becomes the norm to be, in that existence, in that world, cyberized. You have a cyber brain. You have, cyber body parts. You have an interface with the outside world that's built right into your spinal column.
Yeah.
That's the whole premise of the very first movie, is people are being hacked. And they have this entirely different personality put into their body that they believe is real. And it's just as easily the government or a corporation as it is a single hacker.
Yeah.
And I think there's got to be an issue there of once your body is online, in the same sense your computer is online, that's opening up a Pandora's box gateway to just terrifying things.
And forget, because this is the problem, because you got to talk about the level of threat and how easily something could escalate and what it could cause and the likelihood of something happening. And if you as a person and your entire being is connected to this network or whatever it is that would be, you would be a kind of assimilating into to allow for whatever we're talking about, you don't have to be a cybernetically enhanced freak. You don't have to have super strength or literally nothing. Literally, your brain being connected to a network means that somebody could take over your body and then just do whatever a normal human person could do to just wreak havoc. Literally, you want to assassinate somebody? Just fucking take over someone's brain and just have them go full force. It doesn't matter if they die, you've hacked them.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? It's like there is like that is such a scary thought for things like just random acts of terrorism and like suicide bombers, anything. Like there is so much wrong with that.
Why would you go through the trouble to assassinate a political leader when you could just hack his bodyguard?
Like anything, and that's where that problem. Like if you're talking like just old school like car mechanic, you're able to just slap some metal onto your shoulder, and now you've got this fucking badass arm that you have like a Swiss Army knife for each finger and all this stuff. That's really cool, but that's never what it's gonna be. Our original vision for the future is so far gone and completely inaccessible because of the technological advancements we've already made. We're living in the boring dystopia. Yeah, anything at all quote unquote futuristic that could be coming down the line is so many shades darker than what we've imagined. Not necessarily in terms of, that was a bad analogy, but what I'm saying is it's so far beyond, because it's so funny to look back and see what the future looked like to older generations, because it always has that veneer of like the time that it came from, and there's never any real care taken into trying to look at things through the lens of generations ahead, you know. Yeah. And like the more, like, no matter what we look at away in the future, it's always going to be skewed, because what we think will be too far advanced will be old technology by the point that comes around. Well, then it's not even in terms of technology, but in terms of mentality and the social morals. Yeah, exactly. Like the whole social landscape is going to be completely and totally different. What's acceptable right now could be an absolute atrocity. You know what I mean? It's like the old films from the 1950s is like, you still couldn't be gay, but they had flying cars. Now that it's fucking 2021, 20 years past when most of those films and TV shows had taken place, it's completely fine to be gay now, but we still don't have flying cars. So yeah, good luck predicting the future. Which I don't think we'll ever actually have flying cars. Like Fifth Element style flying cars, I don't think that's going to be a thing. I don't think so either, not in the way it's been depicted, but also looking at how the global warming and the global climate and all of that is like, we can't pave the whole road. We can't pave the whole world. We can't make everything into a road, so we're going to have to think of something. I don't care if it's some futuristic hover train that can, stop at your house. Yeah. If it's some sort of like amazing futuristic public transit. Will we have flying cars and taxis and like have 17 roadways stacked on top of each other through these like 35,000 feet highways? No, probably not. Yeah. But there's no sustainable way to have even electric cars. Like electronic roadways and cyberpunk cars that can charge while they're driving. Yeah. That's cool, but those are still limited to physical contact with a driving surface. We're going to have to think of something better. Yeah. I like the thought. I like the idea of sorry. You go first. You let me ramble enough. Thank you. I like the thought that the true downfall of the human race is going to come from being too careful down the line. Like, as we get more and more, like, we push forward farther and farther, we make more and more technological and like medicinal advancements, and we become more like self-aware of how much harm we cause to ourselves. You know, it's like, oh, not too much butter. You know, don't do this. You can work out, but you can walk out too much. You got to be careful about that. You can get like too much of this, too much of that, too little of this, and everything becomes monitored. Everything becomes regulated, and we push farther and farther into peak human condition, which, I mean, is ultimately
and
also being
stifle it.
Yeah, and running perfectly in parallel with the whole like need for convenience and luxury and things becoming more accessible to like lower and lower income families. Like there's like the lower mid tier in America there's so much more accessible to them than even like the high middle class like however many years ago. And it's the whole idea of like the convenience package of everything. Like we have officially hit a point that you and I, Jordan, were talking about either individually or together. Dude, could you imagine if McDonald's delivered?
Yeah, literally. This is like only what, 5-10 years ago?
Yeah, and it seemed
that
like
we were talking about this.
It seemed like something that nothing was going to happen.
Far out. So like they're never going to do that. They make so much money and they're never going to bow to being a delivery service.
Yeah.
Coronavirus.
And it's like, because the whole point I was saying, because it kind of sounded like rambling there for a second, I was never able to really round it over. My point is being so careful is going to increase life expectancy. Therefore, we put out way too many humans versus how many humans get put in the dirt.
Yeah, like,
to a point that we're just like a virus. We're just going to consume, and that's not a new idea. I mean, shit, that idea has been theorized and explored so many different times. I just think it's funny that is one of the very likely like outcomes for the human race is we're just going to get too good at not dying, and that's actually going to hurt us.
There's actually an interesting point that this was not only an episode on the original Star Trek series, but also on one of the shows on Science Channel where humans basically become functionally immortal.
Yeah.
You know, you have DNA supplementers that constantly renew the nucleotide bonds in your cells to where you basically don't age, you know, unless it's some horror-filled thing to where your entire body disintegrates. There's always a way to put you back together.
Yeah, unless you're destroyed on a molecular level.
And on the Star Trek side of it, it's a religious philosophy to where we can't end our own life. You know, we can't, put ourselves in the dirt. We can't commit suicide because that goes against our beliefs. But on the Science Channel side of it, it was like people are still dying. People are still choosing to die basically as a decision. You're allowed to live as long as you want. But things like new births are given out on a license basis. And the ability to die is somewhere between Futurama's suicide cabinets and the voluntary decisions, I suppose. You know, imagine you're 300 and some odd years old, yet you still look 22. You decided you've had enough of this utopia.
Yeah.
And you decide to die. You go to this, specialized clinic and you organize a service and you have this last shindig party and then you lay in this tube and then you die,
Well, not even that. Think about this. Think about an age switch that you can just turn on, right? So instead of this morbid idea of like just going to the processing plant when you're finally finished, but instead like there's
allowing yourself to age out, basically.
Yeah, either whatever is done being undone, because let's face it, if we hit a point where we can keep people from aging, we can make someone age. So it's like either there's a switch that needs to be flipped or whatever is being done to you, you just say, forget it, which, hey, that had to be expensive. So there's some expense cutting right there. And you can just actually live out the rest of your days in like the best outcome possible, because there's no way in hell you're going to have some just terrible like heart attack or disease ridden ending.
You just choose to be old and die.
You can just choose to eventually and living as long as that you've probably have at that point, right? Being able to just go retire. And because think about having an entire lifetime to achieve your goals at your peak. Think about that. Now that is a part of this whole thing that truly becomes a beautiful idea, because
that's the utopia side of things.
Instead of someone retiring, go ahead.
That's like you get to be 25 as long as you want.
Yeah, but it's like being able to like achieve everything you've ever wanted. You've become truly successful, financially stable, independent, and you're just able to retire and live out the rest of your days, which up until this point was pretty much forever. And then instead of retiring at 60 and getting to live out the rest of your life at ease, not having to work, instead it's you get to start living your life from that prime point. With like that absolutely ends the whole like time, money, energy argument.
Yeah, that's a very utopian society look.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in the real world, there are, I think it was in Nevada, local governments. I think in the state legislature, they were trying to pass an amendment that allowed large technology companies to create their own small governments inside the state.
Oh, that's dangerous.
That's terrifying. Do you know why they don't do that now, especially in places like Nevada?
Give me the
abridged version is basically they tried this with the coal miners and they basically had to kill them all because the coal miners were like, "Hey, we want to be treated like people," and the corporations went, "No, you're not people. You're my product." And they're like, "This is bullshit. We're not going to work." And they're like, "Okay, you're all dead." And then they fucking killed them all. Huh. Where do you think the term redneck comes from? It's kind of a twofold thing from where it comes from, the sunburn back of your neck from the farm workers in the South, but also in the coal industry, wearing a red handkerchief meant you were part of the union.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of them that were caught wearing those red handkerchiefs were then met with unfortunate accidents. Tightens your tie, because they were unionizing against this company that believed they owned the people because they owned the town, they owned the coal mine, they owned all of the land they were all standing on, they owned most of the profits and product coming out of the area at the time. And a lot of coal miners died from anti-union thugs. And here we are in 2021 giving technology companies, who are notoriously some of the worst, most toxic companies to work for.
Oh, yeah.
The same power. It's like, yeah, they may not be busting their ass in a coal mine, but I can see to the point of, you've got to go to a bathroom and there's a little fucking lock on the door that please swipe your employee card to deduct 1 hour for a 2-minute bathroom break. Thank you.
Yeah, no.
And you stop being paid in actual U.S. currency and you start being paid in these, what does Amazon call it?
I can't remember.
Like Amazon, they try to do a thing called swag bucks. It's like every employee had their own little pet dragon, and you could trade swag bucks in for things like paid time off or products from the company store. It's like, this doesn't work. This is the bad cyberpunk future.
Wait, pet dragon? What?
Yeah. they tried this thing where like every one of these employees had like a little app, right? They could access. And in this app, they had these little dragons. And the harder you worked and the longer you worked, you would accumulate what they called swag bucks.
Okay.
And you could trade these swag bucks that your dragon collected through your employment there, basically, to trade in for like extra bathroom breaks, snacks from the cafeteria, and products from the Amazon company stores. It's like these sound an awful lot like pre-union era fucking terrible things, but because they're phrased in these people-friendly kind of things, it's turning us into this kind of cyberpunk dystopia to where governments are useless. It's the corporations that own you and govern you now.
Yeah.
This is the bad timeline. I personally can't wait until we have a pile up in the human vacuum tubes, like in Futurama.
Yeah. Gotta relieve pressure somewhere. Kind of taking this in a slightly different direction, but sticking to the same kind of like futuristic other you type.
Oh yeah,
scenario.
no, I have a whole place this is going, but continue.
How far off do you think we are from just straight up Ready Player One?
Oh, God, Ready Player One. Honestly, I've been following a lot of the haptic feedback stuff. As far as that goes, actually feeling it, we're still a little ways off. But as far as putting on the headset and then you're immersed in this world, you know, at least visually and auditorially, dude, we're like almost there.
Yeah.
I think it was Apple that's putting out the thing now. It's like 2 4K or 8K displays per eye. And it gives you peripheral vision. It gives you this, like, it adjusts to you. And
Yeah.
while I don't agree with Apple or anything that they do, at the same time, it's like, dude, this is basically Ready Player One visor.
Yeah.
It's like you're no longer putting this thing on, you're seeing a distorted screen that you can kind of squint hard and like, okay, you're in the video game world.
Yeah.
No, these are full Ultra HD displays. This is almost to the point where you put it on and you're in a different place.
Yeah, because I was talking with Josh, or AKA Fat Jesus, and he was saying, he was kind of sad because you're never going to see, like, he wasn't going to see like full body VR is the way he put it, and we're going to see full body VR in his lifetime, and he's like 26, I think, is his age.
I don't know.
Someone that was saying,
due to Moore's law, he might.
No, he's going to. Are you kidding?
That's what I'm saying.
Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, think about it. As a child, like within the first 3 years of my life, I'm not entirely sure exactly when this memory is from. I remember getting a little VR, quote unquote, VR Power Ranger game. What this was, and some people are going to remember these kind of things. It was a little headset, and then these two little, like, you could almost call them gloves, but they were basically just like little pads with wires running from them to the headset. And there was just enough basically to kind of put around your, like kind of fit your fingers in, like little, like I said, like little like makeshift glove things. And
it's kind of almost like that, for the SNES. Or the NES, the Power Glove.
Yeah, well, nothing anywhere close to that intricate. But and
Yeah.
you would put the visor on, and it was just this little screen, and like the old like plug and play games, or like the old like handheld little games where everything that you could see, everything that could be shown on the screen was basically just like an image that was already there.
Oh yeah, like those old LCD calculators.
Or like Game & Watch or anything like that. It was like that. Yeah. And you had these enemies that came from one of three directions. And it was just basically picture, picture, that slow, and you would move your hand in that direction and it was like you were punching them.
Right.
And that was VR, and anything of the time that was like virtual reality, it was this gimmicky, awful mess.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember I had one that was like a racing game like that, where you had your car and little steering wheel, and you tilt it and it would go into one of three places to avoid the other cars.
Exactly.
And like you could see them all, they just lit up differently.
Yeah, exactly. And it was, like I said, that was like super young child, 3 to 5 years old. I'm now 29 years old, and if I have the money, I can live in a fully realized virtual chat room with people who have full body tracking, good full body tracking. Like it's just a matter of money.
I encourage you to look up VR Lolathon or Lolaton. I can't remember how do you spell his YouTube name. But he's a mime, and he makes these custom avatars, and he does basically like a mime routine with each one of them that he creates himself.
Yeah.
But he has full body tracking.
Yeah.
He either pre-records these things or he does them live, depending upon the avatar. And it is so amazingly good that he's doing this on just your consumer level technology. Anybody can buy it. Anybody can do this. Anybody can create these things. And it's on a platform that, to my knowledge, is free. Because Steam, you can download for free. And VR Chat, you can download for free, at least right now, because it's in beta.
Yeah.
And it translates so well because his body tracking is already so good.
Yeah, but the entry point is the hardware, not the software.
That's what I'm saying is, even without the fancy body tracking hardware, it still exists. You can still access this thing if you have just the cheapest consumer VR headset.
Yeah.
But I'm saying the technology still exists for him to pull off pantomime.
Yeah. Well, and
at the consumer level, he can do bodily humor, like slapstick.
Yeah.
And it works because it's already that immersive.
Yeah.
In our lifetime.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. You're just like the technology being available. Yes. And that's what I'm saying is
2 years ago it was crazy.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like the leap within the past 30 years isn't even the relevant point. The relevant is the last 10 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The last 10 years, there has been such an advance. I mean, like from 1990 to 2000 is basically irrelevant. 2000 to 2000, it's 2010 to 2020. That's where it all fucking happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I'm kind of amending this a little bit, but it's Moore's law. Technology will double on itself every 2 years.
And I believe that law is actually, which I don't know this for a fact. This is just my opinion with how things have been moving and how I've noticed it.
itself.
It's outpacing itself, but that's just the nature of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's just its nature. So you're telling me that a guy who's 26 years old today isn't going to see a fully immersive VR experience within the next 30 years? No.
No, there's
Hell
no way.
No. Absolutely not.
There's no way that even something like, not to get conspiracy, and I don't mean it to sound this way, but there's got to be training apparatuses and there's got to be immersive detail, haptic feedback, virtual reality gear out there already existing somewhere, at least in its prototype form.
Yeah.
That is already to this. We're just not privy to it.
Dude, that's not even conspiracy theory. Gabe Newell is working on he's involved in like, I can't remember exactly what it's called, like computer brain interface.
Yes. And
Like,
those are already terrifying because
yeah.
you feed a human a picture, right?
Uh-huh.
Human looks at picture. Computer's attached to human brain. Not even directly attached. I'm talking you just wear a fucking helmet, basically.
Yeah.
The computer spits out an image of what it thinks you're looking at, and it's already terrifyingly accurate.
Yeah.
So there's no way, you know, even in our lifetimes, we're going to look at a virtual magazine or virtual catalog at some point, and there's just going to be this VR suit or VR chair that you just strap yourself into.
Yeah.
And it basically becomes a virtual reality version of the movie Surrogates.
Yeah. Well, let's see. That's not even what I'm talking about. That's not even what I'm talking about. I'm talking about recreating physical sensation.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Like emotional sensation, like being able to feel, like, let's say you are simulating a beach. I'm talking about feeling the wisp of like the waves and the water and the cool air coming off of the shore.
Exactly.
That's like that's what I'm talking about. And it's like that's actually what like Gabe Newell was talking about. He's like, right now it's basically under the radar, but any company that's not looking into this has lost. They're out of it. Any entertainment centric company or business that is not looking into this technology anywhere within the near future has already lost. It does not. It does not matter what you're doing.
Think about it. In 10 years, they're going to be advertising these things to where you come home from a hard day of work, you know, grueling at the Amazon coal mine, and you can come home and put on this suit and immediately go to any beach in the world and relax.
Yeah.
Or you can go roller skating in a 70s themed skate park that's the size of Yankee Stadium, you know?
And it's interesting that people get so like twisted in the moral discussion of this whole thing with that, because like, of course, what we as humans have seen as worthwhile and positive and of actual value to us as a species has slowly changed over time. But there's always been this idea that eventually things are going to go, because we are creatures of pleasure. Like we are driven by our desire.
We need to be fulfilled.
Yeah. And there's always been this idea, as far back as entertainment itself, that we're eventually just going to become this, like, what's the word I'm looking for? We're going to become complacent, and we're totally fine with simulating our desires, like 100%. It's like, would you rather go out there
everything is in the brain?
Yeah. And is it real or not? Is it real? Well, no. Coming off of that, is it real or not? Just because it's not physically there, you're experiencing it.
Exactly. Your brain's not going to know the difference at that point.
Exactly.
So what's the difference between doing it physically and doing it virtually?
Yeah.
If your brain doesn't know any better.
Yeah. And to companies,
and kind of pulls,
like corporations, fuck it, man. If we can keep them happy, do it. If we can keep them working, we can keep them churning out that product. Let them just go home and hop into their virtual world. Let them spank their virtual prostitutes. Let them commit genocide. Doesn't matter. It's not actually happening.
Exactly. It's like fucking, what's the...
That's what the corporations are saying.
Like, yeah,
Not
it's
me.
like somewhere between The Matrix and Minority Report.
Yeah.
Which are two amazing cyberpunk films, mind you.
Oh, yeah. Like the whole concepts and the world building is incredible.
Yeah.
But going back to one of my original points real quick. Oh my God, just thinking about that, I started losing it. The moral dilemma. Oh yeah. Think about it this way, right? So is that good for humanity? Is that good for a human being to just waste away in some bedroom with a visor over their face while they pretend to live their life? You know? But let's go to a real world example. A terrible, violent, or not violent, but toxic relationship. any person that has been around, for a while is going to tell another person dealing with some rambunctious, rebellious teenager or young adult, they've got to make their own choices. You can't tell them that person is bad for you. You're not allowed to be with them. Because what are they going to do? Fuck you, Dad! And then just leave. They're going to go
the best thing you can do is give them the foresight and the education and hope they make the right decision.
Yeah, be supportive, be and be there, be an outlet for them.
Experience, because I was an asshole as a teenager.
And the whole point is, you can't have some philosophical argument over the morality of it, because you can't control anybody. You can't tell some adult that they are or are not allowed to do something. You know what I mean? Like, exactly. That's not feasible. They're always going to rebel. And that's in human nature. Period.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
That's a human thing. That's not even a teenager thing. That's a human thing. Is 90% of us, you tell us no, we're going to do it just because you said no.
Yeah.
Whether it's possible or not.
And every generation is pissing on the ideals of 3 generations before. Hell, these days, I'm experiencing generational drifts and separations from like kids. And I shouldn't even be at a point in my life where like I'm even experiencing that. Like the world has changed so much just for me. And I'm 29 years old. If I said 28 earlier, no, I'm 29.
Well, that's the whole thing, is like me and you were in that generation that in the course of a year or two, we went from sidewalk chalk and hopscotch to smartphones.
Oh yeah.
Like we're the transitional generation anyway.
Yeah.
So we're going to be a little bit twisted and off on it anyway, because you have the generation before us that had none of it.
Yeah.
And the generation after us
has all of it. But my point is how that has changed.
Precisely.
That's my point. We're not talking about going from, from coal. I'm not going to pretend like I know enough to fucking talk about that. This is going to be a big
from
jump.
Radio to TV.
Radio to TV, from stone to industry.
Yes.
Like we're talking about, there was an entire shift. I'm making myself sound just so intelligent right now.
I can follow you. It's okay.
But it's the thought that there was such a technological leap, and then things have just kept going. You know what I mean? At that breakneck pace.
It's like we're going by leaps and bounds, faster and faster.
Yeah. So you're not having like the old and outdated, not saying they're outdated, but the old and outdated arguing with the young and upcoming in this like humongous generational gap. We're literally talking about 30-year-olds arguing with 20-year-olds over like moral justification over shit that has changed 2 to 3 times within the span of 5 to 10 years.
Like a good way to look at it is from millennials to like Gen Z, is we have basically the same outlook on the future, but 2 totally different perspectives on it.
Oh, yeah.
Like a lot of the millennials, they look at like, oh, everything's going to hell and depression and alcoholism and, sliding further down the hill. And fucking Gen Z is like, dude, everything's going to shit. TikTok dance. It's like,
That's actually perfect, because I was about to bring up this like little post that I saw, and it's like, it's so hard to think about the little nursery rhymes and songs like Ring Around the Rosie and all that stuff and how morbid they actually are. And it's like, kids were singing that? What the fuck? And then you get on the internet and it's like some little kid in like shades and a wind blazer. It's like, everything's going to hell. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, wait, yeah, no, I get it.
No, it's like the song, like all the pumped up kids with the pumped up kicks, better run, outrun my gun. Yeah. It's like, dude, that's about a school shooting.
Yeah.
But that's like one of the most uplifting, like light beat songs of our current generation. Was like, it got so popular.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, this is about somebody like putting on a pair of sneakers and shooting up a school.
Yeah.
Maybe not exactly that, but outrun my gun. Come on.
Outrun my bullets. You know what's interesting? I just made a correlation in my head with the conversation of cyberpunk and enhancements and human augmentation and VR. It's kind of the same thing, just looking at it from different perspectives.
Precisely. It's like, do you want to have this future internal or external?
Damn, I did not even realize that. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. I just saw a slight thematic connection. Was like, yeah, let's talk about it for a second. But like, that's wow.
No, it's the same premise. It's just, do you want the internal universe to expand, or do you want the external?
I don't think we're ever going to reach a cyberpunk kind of future, because VR is going to grow so exponentially fast that eventually we're not going to need any kind of physical advancements.
That's what I'm saying, is like there's going to be a crossover, because eventually VR is going to be the place to where everyone goes anyway.
Yeah. And
the simple external cyberpunk ideals will just be normal.
Yeah.
It's like, it's going to be normal for you to just lose an arm, get a better one, go back to work 2 weeks later, just like it's normal right now for, your stomach to hurt, you go get your appendix removed, you're back to work in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, is like, they're both going to be there. They're both going to exist. It's all going to be about the punk side of the cyberpunk. Is like, are we going to fall into dystopian or utopian?
Well, that's never going to be an attainable goal either way.
No, it's never going to be a complete one-sided.
Because the story never ends.
Right. That's what I'm saying, is like, it's never going to be finished. It's just, we're going to strive for one or the other, depending upon, like I said, the punk side of the cyberpunk. But this all kind of goes around as like one theme that, this is one thing I don't think will be able to hang around, is one thing I really believe in, and that's the personal craftsman, right?
Yeah.
Like, take the latest Cyberpunk 2077 game. You have this one, like, underworld backwoods doctor that you can go and get your augments from.
Well, you have many, but yeah, that's the focal
point is, like, he's actually an actual person.
Yeah.
There's an actual person that can do this. And honestly, I don't think that's going to be a thing, because especially nowadays, it's less and less and less about personal craftsmanship and more about, okay, who has enough money to own the piece of equipment that'll do this automatically?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of already there anyway. It's just the focal point.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying, is where is it going to happen? Because I watch a lot of people on YouTube that 10, 15, 20 years ago, they were a necessary industry.
Yeah.
Take cobblers, for example.
Yeah.
Before cobblers, you bought one good pair of work shoes and you just got them resold until they just absolutely wore out, because it wasn't nothing to go into town, go on Main Street, go to a cobbler, get them to redo your soles, and your boots and shoes, whatever, were perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Nowadays, the only way you'll see a cobbler is if he's doing those super high-end, fancy Italian leather loafers.
Mm-hmm.
Because things have become so industrialized that it's considered less of an essential craft and more of a luxury.
Yeah.
And it's not just that, it's with a lot of industry.
Yeah, and that's just the nature of progression, though, is the thing. That's the problem, because that's what I'm talking about. What I said earlier, like talking about the morality of those situations, is when you have an ever expanding species and your population is growing farther and farther, bigger and bigger, more and more. that's just the nature of how things work. You have to supply that demand. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying.
And
it's like
back in the day when we had no technological like equivalent to someone just working, of course that's going to be the peak. And as you move forward and forward, and that's what you know, and the generation after generation after generation is sharing in that same kind of experience until there's this advancement and, oh no, you're killing my father's business. You are literally the devil and you are evil, and that's taking all the heart and soul out of it. Move 50, 100 years down the road, and it's just the way it is.
That's what I'm saying is it's collectivism is what I'm more talking about. Is while the human race really wants to have this connection and really have this interaction one-on-one with people, I fear that in like these cyberpunk futures, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
You're never going to have these one-on-ones anymore. You're never going to have, so-and-so that is the expert at it, and you've got to go see them, Well, it's always just going to be who has the technology.
Well,
because let me kind of do it this way. Machinists. That's one of my big interests. Is before being a machinist, you got to go to a shop, you had to get to know the guys, you had to learn techniques and trigonometry, shop math. And you had to really learn the machines. You had to learn the ins and outs of everything. You had to figure out processes and how things work. Nowadays, to be a machinist, you go take a 6-month course and you learn how to hit buttons on a CNC.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about, is there's a certain human element that gets lost when you industrialize things that I think we want to hang on to as a human species. I just don't think we're going to be able to. Well, that's what I'm getting at.
Well, no, because you're talking about the difference of necessity and just accessibility. There's just different options now. Right. You can still do it, but advancements have made it much more easy and accessible for a wider audience.
That's what I'm saying is like using machinists as an example again is CNC machining now is viewed as infinitely more precise than anything a human can do.
Yeah.
Even though they're technically capable of the same thing. You're losing the human element.
Yeah.
And while machining isn't a good example of that, something that's very like woodworking. Woodworking is a tried and true human interaction thing.
Yeah.
Lots of people get into woodworking because it's still a very human thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you have IKEA. If you go and buy a shelf from IKEA,
mm-hmm.
It's going to work. It's going to fit together. Anybody with a brainstem and 10 minutes of reading the instruction manual can put together an IKEA shelf.
Mm-hmm.
But there's thousands and thousands that look just like it.
Yeah.
And someone who's a woodworker can build you a shelf that is wholly unique.
Yeah.
And where do you draw that line of, like, where's that okay? Like in machining and woodworking. And where is it not okay? Like, where does it draw the line of, like, you don't want to automate the human condition?
There is none. Like it's crazy how we keep talking about things that keep circling back into our original conversation of what we were talking about. There literally isn't one. Like
mm-hmm.
everything's on the docket. Everything's on the cutting board for the deity of convenience.
Yeah. No, that's a really good way to say it.
And that's just it, because everything that you just said ties back into that concept of the argument of morality. How are you going to argue the morality of something when people are just going to do it anyway, because what you're saying isn't, is it right or wrong from a thing of doing it, but is it okay to give that option to people when you have this human element that you're talking about that is supplying jobs to real people and adding that personal, customized touch of a human doing it and able to give you this truly customized product, this wholly unique experience. But there's no way that you can say that the IKEA thing is morally wrong, because just go to the guy anyway.
That's not what I'm saying.
Well, no, I'm not saying you're saying
that. Morality. It's about the we're losing something special from the human race.
Well, that you could easily tie that into morality, but I'm not saying you're saying that, but I'm saying the conversation lends itself to that, because in all actuality, that guy is still there. You can still do that. Look at Jack White. Records are booming compared to where
that's a good example. Yeah.
Like compared to where they were when, industry was trying to kill it and move forward, and advance. This option of records didn't die. It is still there. But there are other alternatives, what some consider to be better.
It really moves from, like, what I'm seeing, from places where you go from it's a new thing to industry kicks in, tries to kill it, it becomes outmoded.
But it becomes a niche in that same regard.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It becomes outmoded, and then certain people refuse to let it die, refine it, and then it becomes a niche. It becomes an interest. Is it easier and cheaper to go get the Apple or the, Google Play 99-cent song and have it instantly? Yeah. Is there an objective warmth and nostalgia tied with a record where you go through the physical process of pulling it out of the sleeve, putting it on a record player, playing the record? You are hearing the same song. You're hearing it even probably at the same quality, or at least a quality to where a human ear can't discern. But the physical act of having this object and this procedure that you can appreciate really adds something to the experience.
Yeah. And this is tying back to this is such, I hate to keep pointing this out. It blows my mind it blows my mind how well, accidentally how well crafted this all is. That's just a generational thing, because you have the same argument with, you can never reproduce the experience of hearing the music. You have to go hear it live. Otherwise, you're not getting it. And then as each technology, there are literally people today who argue the same thing for discs, for CDs versus MP3s. And then
because there's a physical act around it.
And then you get into the argument of MP3 versus wave. Lossless versus compression. And it's like there's always something that a person will tie themselves to.
Right, it's a nostalgia.
Yeah.
And let me put it in a really good way that I think you'll enjoy. One of our favorite artists, Deadmau5.
Yeah.
I know for a fact we're listening to the exact same thing that he plays live that he does on his CDs. It's the exact same audio. But he plays it in a way live and gives us an experience live that we can never attain just listening to his track he released on a CD or on an MP3.
Yeah. And it's that human element that you were talking about. And that right there is the perfect little kind of capsule to house what we're talking about in a nutshell, is that the option is still there. It's just whether or not you are going to do it. What is going to be chosen? Are you just going to keep listening to this, or are you going to shut? And then, of course, you have the object of paying the money, making the trip, being able to physically go to where the music is happening. But taking all the obstacles out of it, it's just the choice.
Here's another way to look at it.
Yeah.
is especially like using somebody like Jack White for an example a while ago. He made his own record company because, you know, he has the money to invest in it, granted.
Yeah.
But
also the passion.
But also the passion. But let's look at it this way.
Yeah.
Prototyping. 5-10 years ago, if you wanted something prototyped, the industry was not there. The technology was not there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want something prototyped, you can get a piece of software on your home computer. Learn how to use it, prototype your own thing, and 3D print it in your house.
Yep. Which is beautiful, by the way.
And that, I think, is the culmination of industry and the human element collaborating on a point to where they work together beautifully.
Well, because it's in the...
You have the industry that pushes these innovations and these developments of newer and better 3D printing technology.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have the human element where someone creates a thing, prints it out, it works okay for them, they put it online.
Yeah.
Other people download it, change it, modify it, re-upload it, refine it. It becomes a better and better and better product.
Yeah.
Not just because the industry advances to where the technology gets better and more refined, but also the human element gets involved and more people get involved, and it becomes a collective interest to where it improves people's lives and the product or whatever it is.
Yeah.
To the point, and that ties right back around into the amputee thing.
Yeah.
The cheapest amputee replacement for an arm is like that hook. You straighten your arm out, hook opens, you close your arm in, hook closes. That is out of reach for a lot of people even. And it is the bare bones essentials, what you would just barely be able to get by with as a replacement to your arm or to your hand. But there are people out there now who, like I said, through the refinement of the 3D printing technology and also through the collective interests of a lot of at-home DIY hobbyists, small business 3D modelers, are developing these extremely low-cost yet extremely functional electronic full motor hands for people who either can't afford or are in a predicament to where, like, if they're a child, they will outgrow it.
Yeah.
And I think if we go forward into this cyberpunk timeline, as long as we're innovating the correct things and keeping people in the correct things, we'll end up better for it. If everything gets too industrialized and too technology, we're going to lose it. If we stay too human invested and too human focused, we're not going to get there.
Yeah.
There has to be a balance.
Yeah, like an ego.